Hey everyone, it's Jim
And Charles
from Valves and More, an online vintage tube store. And today in Tube Lab number 274, we're going to talk about point-to-point versus PCB wired. And it should be a really fun episode. We're going to do some high-res recording comparison, and but first, caution everyone, electronics and tube amplifiers can have very high voltages present, which can be lethal. Exercise extreme caution when working around them. Always consult a professional technician when in doubt. Okay, so this is just about as perfect as it gets. We're going to compare the exact same circuit point-to-point wired over here and the production version of the same circuit, PCB wired, basically.
And for those just joining us, this is the prototype for the 6N1P balanced preamp, which we just released to test builders, and they've all shipped to them. And so we have an example of this on the new chassis with a full PCB construction, and this is the original prototype here. That's all point-to-point wired, except for the power supply.
Yeah. So the eagle eyes out there will have said, wait a minute, that's not fair. The power supply is sitting on a PCB, and it is. We actually used an existing PCB that I modified from our modern line phono kit. But the circuit itself in the power supply is identical to the final production PCB. So really what we're comparing, or what we're going to compare if I stop dropping things, is the main tube circuits. So we've got a left and right gain stage. We've got a phase splitter in the middle here. That just takes the RCA signal and splits it into the two different phases of a balanced circuit. And we have a low impedance cathode output stage, which is over here. And there's other similarities too, actually. A lot of the signal path in the modern line build, that's the production version that we sell as a kit, is using the same wire looms in a very similar fashion to move the signal around. Not exactly the same, but a very similar fashion. The wire's almost identical. So that should make for a really good comparison. Now,
actually also duplicated the ground scheme between the two as well. So the point-to-point is wired and grounded in the same manner as the modern line version.
So we've got basically identical components between each of these preamps. The circuit is identical. The ground paths are not exactly identical because we use this big plate here as a ground plane, but we always try to build the prototypes with as close a ground return path to what the modern line PCB version will look like.
And actually, just let me cut in here, because we did build it using the plate as the main ground path, but we actually modified it right at the end. I guess you've forgotten. And we are not using it for the majority of the ground path now. Not in this build anyway.
Yeah. It's sort of a hybrid. So, and then when Charles designed the PCB for the production version, the modern line version, he worked really hard to maintain a lot of the same ground circuit topology. And you can see here's one of the ground paths. And you notice how over here, these are the signal traces. You see how small those are and how big the ground return paths are? And then over here, you can see the same thing. All these heavy traces are all ground return paths. And in the back, he took all of the return paths to one it's basically a flooded area of the PCB. This is all that solid area, that's all solid copper. And this essentially becomes the primary star ground point of the entire preamp. So, and over here, of course, we have the star ground point of the entire power supply right here, coming back to the IEC. So they're very, very close. And it should be interesting because other than a couple of components that change, the coupling capacitors are identical. They even came from the same lot. The resistors are identical. The Alps pot's identical.
We changed the cathode bypass capacitors,
Yep.
but not the actual capacitance or voltage values. It was more just to get them into the axial size.
Yeah. Now, one of the things I've found really interesting over the years is that there are some smaller production run manufacturers of higher end tube gear, and they swear by exact point-to-point wire positioning and really take it to the nth degree. And let's just get that up like that. See what I mean? And as a result, they have to actually keep a finished prototype or production version in which when they build the next point-to-point wired version, they have to actually duplicate every wire position, length, position, and you can see how a point-to-point wired layout allows you to work in a three-dimensional space. And so you can go up, you can go down, you can go sideways in either direction, you can go right on to the ground plane, you can come way up above it, and it gives you, I think, almost an infinite amount of layout capability. But the downside to that is if anything is not positioned correctly or shifts after the build, you could potentially have a problem in which you have essentially a conflict. So, for example, we've got the B plus high voltage flying in here. See how it's all, it looks haphazard and not that neat. But in fact, it's intentional the way it's been laid out. You can see how it just flies in. And what we don't want is high voltage mixing with the signal path. Now, this is all DC, right? Almost all audio gear is essentially powered in DC, and your audio signal is essentially, I shouldn't say essentially, is always going to be an AC signal, right? So, and noise is generally considered to be AC, even though in most cases the noise is actually sourced from the DC side, from the power supply side. But if it deviates from a nice straight line of direct current, it's now AC, right?
Or it has an AC component.
Yeah. Exactly. So So that's the sort of the advantage and disadvantage of point-to-point wiring, is that you can position things wherever you want. The downside, of course, is you've got to have a lot of real estate to get all that layout done in such a way that you don't have your conflicts in place. And it's almost impossible in point-to-point wiring, unless it's an extremely simple circuit, to compact the circuit. The more you compact it, the more dangerous it gets, the more difficult it gets to do the layout. Now, if you look at a PCB, so think about this, and then I'll flash you into this. Look how neat that is. Everything is laid out, it's logical. Even though we're working in only a 2D model, basically, or space, we have two sides. So you can see here we've got an important trace that has to sneak across here, and it actually uses the gap between the pins, which is kind of sneaky, but why not? It's there. And if we flip it over, we've got another side to work on in which we can bring a different trace, and we have a nice thick layer of fiberglass PCB board in between, so we have some distance. And we are also, when Charles does the design work, he's also aware of both faces of the board simultaneously.
Yep.
So if we have a conflict with, let's say, a high voltage line and a low voltage signal line or trace, then we can shift things. We can come across a trace. You can't really see it because I can't show you both sides. But if we had a conflict, we could come across a trace at a right angle and have minimal exposure.
Yeah, well, here's a good spot right here. So these two parallel traces, these are the RCA input signals, and the pads on either side of it are actually for large components that are going to jump over it on the other side of the board, getting as much space between them as possible.
Yeah. So even though it looks like we're severely restricted compared to point-to-point wiring, we actually have a lot of flexibility, and we have the ability to neatenize the circuit and the build so that once we have a PCB that's a clean design, that is a design that doesn't have any noise issues, the circuit is correct, we can manufacture thousands of these, and each and every one of them will be exactly the same. They'll have the same performance electrically if the components are identical. And in my opinion, if this is done properly on a good, high-quality base material when required, with nice, thick, heavy copper traces, this, in my opinion, is a superior method of construction.
Especially for kits and amateur builders and people that just aren't familiar with it. Point-to-point wiring is actually really challenging to do correctly, even if you are experienced.
Yeah, and you can see, even though this was a prototype build, I took my time because we knew that we would probably sell the prototype. And in fact, the prototype is in the store over at MTA right now. I'll put a link below in case you're interested. We only have the one, and I'm not building another one because this took maybe 3 or 4 times as long as it would take to build the modern line version of it. It just takes that long. Now, each and every version after the first one would get easier and easier if I had an example to follow, but it still would take at least twice as long with an example to duplicate. So, yeah, so that's something really to keep in mind. I know a lot of hobbyists really don't care how long it takes them to build their equipment, but time is precious for a lot of people. So if you can build something twice as fast and sonically it'll be as good, then why not? And talking about sonics, I think it's time we head over into the music room and get a test track on, and we're going to we'll put the music up on the video, but Charles is also going to put a link below the video to a high-res link, so that you don't have to listen to it in YouTube sound. You can go ahead and link up to, I think we're recording in 24-bit 96 kilohertz. Mm-hmm. So, and we're going to do a direct capture off of both preamps, and we're going to be feeding the signal through our true balanced Denafrips Pontus 15th DAC, which is really cool. So we'll have balanced inputs, but we will be picking it up on the unbalanced output side, the RCA jacks, which of course is just 1/2 of the balanced signal.
Yeah, and we're also going to use the same set of tubes in both amps.
Ah, yeah, okay, that's a good idea. I hadn't thought about that. Yeah, so we'll have exactly the same tubes. Okay, well, let's go and have a listen.
Kosa
Okay, Charles, what have you got to show off?
Okay, so we know that times are tough for a lot of people right now, and we've made some updates to the way that we sell tubes for Freya sets. Previously, before this, we were selling sets of 4 tubes, but now we're giving people the option to just buy 2 that have been specifically matched for the Freya itself. That means that they have all 4 sections of 2 tubes are matched within 5% of each other. And on top of that, we're putting a couple of different ones that are on sale that are actually tariff exempt as well. So that should really help people out. And these are the tubes in question. So we've got some wonderful Marconi 6SN7 GTBs. And as far as we know, Marconi only ever made them in this style. The earlier GT version looks the same, but with a taller base. And these were made in the RVC plant, I believe, near Toronto, or maybe it was in a Montreal plant. I can't remember exactly. But they're Canadian-made tubes, and that means that under CUSMA, they're tariff exempt.
Yeah, now almost, not all, but a big portion of the Marconi production run was rebranded. These are rebranded GEs.
Yep.
But they did a lot of rebranding for RCA and
you see them for everybody. Westinghouse, RCA, GE, a lot of equipment manufacturers like Simpson.
Yeah.
So you'll see them under all different brands.
They're all exactly the same tube. The interesting thing about the Marconis is when they went to the next generation GTB, they kept the same manufacturing design. So they have an elevated back-to-back T-plate, which is the very first design for the 6SN7. And with an elevated plate, you always get more second harmonic, and the Marconis have this really interesting sound in which if you collect early jazz recordings or monophonic recordings, you'll notice how those less processed recordings, which were done with 1 or 2 microphones and a very simple mixing board, maybe 3 tracks, they have an open sound, a spacious sound that is something that got completely lost when multi-tracking really came in. Anyways, these tubes have that sound. They have this open space around the instruments and vocals, just enough to really give you kind of a unique sonic profile. And a lot of people really like that.
Mm-hmm. So that's option number 1. And we really like them. We don't see them sell as much, and that's part of the reason why we're putting them on sale. But I think they're fantastic tubes. And option number 2 here is actually RCA. And this is the short bottle version that they made. It's actually really similar to the GE 6SN7 GTAs and GTBs. But of course, we've got our offset plates, which is something that RCA did on most of their 6SN7 production. And these are great little tubes. RCA is known for having a sort of a warm mid-range, and it's pretty consistent across most of their tubes, and these have it in there as well.
Yeah, and the RCA 6SN7s among a lot of people with guitar amps and equipment amplifiers love the RCAs because they have this kind of a smooth sound to them. So if you do a lot of crooners, if you listen to a lot of old vocalists, that's the sort of tube that probably will marry just perfectly with what you really like. The thing with tube rolling is even though the 6SN7s as a type, as a big broad type, are all very similar to each other, there's also lots of room for rolling in a different sonic profile and really changing the sound of your preamp. So, have you got these in the Freya section of the store, Charles?
Yeah, they're in the new section. You just have to go to the drop down and select that you want a pair, and then these are going to show up along with a few other tubes that we have, like some GE 6SN7s and some photons that would also make great options for rolling in.
Yeah, in fact, why don't we pull up some GEs and photons and show them off?
Okay, we'll be right back.
Okay, and I'm going to put a link below the video, if I remember, to get you over to the discount pairs. And wait a minute, what's this United Electric tubes? I thought you were going to put up some GEs.
Well, it's another good example of rebranding. Like RCA, like Marconi, like all the major manufacturers, there were a lot of rebrands of GE tubes out there, and a lot of them were made for equipment manufacturers. So United Electron.
I have no idea who that was.
And yeah, so you'll see all sorts of labels on them. So we've got these in there as pairs as well. Both of these tubes actually make excellent cathode followers and gain stage tubes. These ones unfortunately aren't on sale because we don't have a lot of either of them, but we do have enough to make some tight matched pairs.
Okay, well, I think we saved the best for last. What's next? Okay, we recently got in a large lot of RFT EO34 power tubes. And the RFT is one of our 3 vintage EO34s that we specialize in. They were made in the former East Germany. They're rock solid tubes. They sound very good, and we can still get quite a few new old stock and good used tubes in. So we continue to have enough in the bin that we can actually offer some discounts. So what we're going to do for the moment, while we still have inventory, is if you order a good used quad, we'll include a matched free bonus spare tube with the quad. And you can still take whatever discount code you can get with your quad. And we've even got a new old stock deal that we can offer as well. Let's just get them up. Okay, so we have the same deal while inventory lasts for new old stock RFTs. Of all the companies that manufacture tubes, RFTs probably had the highest rate of rebranding. It's just insane how many different companies they rebranded for. But AEG and Siemens were some of the ones that they really did a lot of rebranding. AEG is just German General Electric. That's what it means once you translate it all. So, and actually here is the free spare, and it's actually got one of the original labels. We don't see them that often, but let me get that up on camera so you can take a close look at it. So, yeah, it's very 70s. But anyways, the tubes, sonically the tubes do not perform differently depending on what label you put on them. So the on our tester, the center value for new old stock EO34s is 60 milliamps, but the RFTs consistently test over that. Not a lot though. I mean, 65 milliamps versus 60, that's really very close. So yeah, so you can get the same deal here. If you just buy the new old stock quad, put a note on your order saying that I would like to get the offer and a free spare, and I'll match up a free spare for you. Inventory is limited, so this video is going live on Friday, April the 10th, 2026. So if you're watching this in 2100, well,
I have bad news for you.
Yeah, well, I might not be here anymore. Charles hopefully will be. No, probably not either. But our descendants will be running the store, and maybe they'll still have some inventory left of these, and they'll be offering the same deal. Maybe not for the same price, though.
Probably not.
So, yeah, so we're probably only going to have the inventory for a week or two, and then it'll be gone. This is Jim.
And Charles.
Signing off. Cheers, everyone.